Could the UK government plan to ban X or access to it in the UK? This is what a lot of people are worried about after a spat between Humza, Yousaf and Elon Musk just recently. And even his lawyer, Humza's lawyer, has issued some kind of warning to Elon Musk that there might be consequences for the use of free speech. If you're dying to know what a lawyer thinks about all of this and you want a fresh alternative to the mainstream media, please do subscribe to my channel now and stay tuned. Welcome back to the channel. So following Elon Musk's comments that civil war might be inevitable in the UK, which I covered extensively with the assistance of a US attorney in my previous video, which I'll link below, Humza Yousaf did this video with CNN, where he warned that Elon Musk is a dangerous man. Now, just a caveat for this video, all I'm doing here is reporting to you live events of what's happened and giving you some of my thoughts on them. Let's take a listen to this video first to see what all the fuss is about.
As for Elon Musk, he is one of, I would suggest, one of the most dangerous men on the planet. He uses his billions, he is unaccountable to anyone, to amplify far-right, white supremacist ideology. He has, as you have rightly said, suggested, I think, is hoping for civil war in some parts of Europe, including in the UK. And instead of using X as a platform for good and using his enormous wealth for good, he is using it, I think, for the most wicked evil possible. And in terms of regulation, let me say this is something that the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, will now have to think seriously about what more needs to be done. We need to have better regulation to ensure that we don't have the kind of disinformation that has run rampant in the last week be allowed to do so in the future with such devastating consequences.
Right. So where do we start? There's a lot to unpack there. First of all, he says that Elon Musk is unaccountable to anybody. Well, that's of course not true, because whilst there is the right to free speech and it's protected under the First Amendment in the United States, it does have limits, and I discussed those limits quite extensively in my previous video, again, which I'll link below with the assistance of my friend Brian Rio, the US attorney that contributed for that video. So that first statement by Humza Yousaf is complete nonsense, really, because there is accountability to law with what he says. It's just that what Elon Musk has the freedom to say is far broader than what it seems Humza Yousaf is happy with. Secondly, within that short clip, Humza says that Elon Musk is using enormous wealth for evil things and no good. Well, as an advocate, and since you've only got this video so far, I will give the opposite view, which is that Elon Musk is using his, quote, enormous wealth to develop an electric vehicle company such as Tesla, which is obviously good for the environment, developing SpaceX, which is good for space exploration and the whole of humanity. He's done a lot with Starlink to bring internet access to various places around the world. The list goes on. And that's if you don't go far back to talking about the exchange of money online, of course, with PayPal and so on and so forth. But whether you're an Elon fan or not is irrelevant. To brand somebody as using enormous wealth for evil, as he said in this video, I think is quite disparaging. And ironically, Humza Yousaf here using his platform and status to do an interview with CNN to smear Elon Musk's name. Let's just play that again so you can get the context of that.
As for Elon Musk, he is one of, I would suggest, one of the most dangerous men on the planet. He uses his...
Now, just pausing there, if we think about history for a moment, now without going into any specifics, history has shown us a lot of dangerous men in our history. And many of those, people would argue, are still around today. So to argue that Elon Musk is, quote, one of the most dangerous men on the planet is, quite frankly, a bit of a ridiculous statement to make. And then, as I said, he's wrong to say that Elon Musk is not accountable to anybody, but also what I do take issue with is the next bit of what he says, which is that Elon Musk is amplifying far-right ideology. And I'll tell you why in a minute, but have a listen to this bit first.
Amplify far-right, white supremacist ideology.
Now, the counter-argument to that, now I'm not saying what I believe here, I'm not saying that this is my opinion or what, I'm just giving you an alternative to counter what has been put forward here. Humza Yousaf here says that Elon Musk is amplifying far-right ideology. Well, on X, some people noted that Humza Yousaf himself might be amplifying what some people might term far-left ideology, which not many people really talk about. But this is the clip that they referred to, Humza's own speech himself. Now, in Humza's defense, he was trying to call out institutional racism here by listing off high-profile positions who are white. But again, some people might label this as amplifying far-left ideology. You'll all be familiar with this clip.
White. The Lord Justice Clerk, white. Every High Court judge, white. The Lord Advocate, white. The Solicitor General, white.
And the clip goes on. I'm sure you've seen that clip, and I don't need to play it all. But given the balanced argument here, given that Scotland is, I think, from audit, Scott, the last I checked was 95% white, most people would expect most people in high positions to be white. That's just a statistical relevance rather than anything else. It's certainly not a racist thing. Now, we can talk about the race issue all day long. There are good and bad people from every race on the planet. I have many friends of many different faiths, and I get on very well with all of those, but do I stand against terrorism and those that promote terrorism? Of course. Equally, I stand against anyone who's promoting violence on the streets of the UK, whether they are white or Muslim or otherwise. Anyone should be standing against the incitement of violence. However, when that crosses the territory to attacking free speech is a whole other issue. So first of all, just to recap, where Humza says that Elon is not accountable to anybody, he very much is. He's accountable under law. But the free speech protection in the US is far stronger than it is in the UK. However, there's a very much more stark warning in this interview with Humza Yousaf, which I'm going to come to in just a moment. So let's go back to pick up on the interview where we left off.
He has, as you have rightly said, suggested, I think, is hoping for civil war in some parts of Europe, including in the UK.
So just pausing there, you can see that he's tripping over his words here because he's obviously thinking about the words that he's using because he's now effectively putting different words in Elon Musk's mouth. So if he changes the nature, the context, and the specific wording and perhaps incitement of what Elon Musk said, then that's changing what he's said. So if he says here that Elon Musk has instigated, that is obviously not what Elon Musk said. For Elon Musk to say that civil war is inevitable is just a comment. It's an opinion. He's not instigating anything, as I explained with the assistance of Brian Rio, attorney at law of the United States, in my previous video. But there is even more to this interview with Humza Yousaf, where he talks about the potential for the UK to take action, make regulations, etc. So let's pick up on this interview once more.
And in terms of regulation, let me say this is something that the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, will now have to think seriously about what more needs to be done. We need to have better regulation to ensure that we don't have the kind of disinformation that has run rampant in the last week be allowed to do so in the future with such devastating consequences.
Now, just to be clear, there are already laws in place to restrict speech, both in the UK and the US. And so regardless of X being available in the UK, which is something important that I'll come back to in a moment, people do have the right to express themselves freely on X, whether other people like it or not, whether it offends people or not, so long as it's not grossly offensive. Our laws don't tend to kick in. So long as it is not directly inciting or encouraging violence or anything of the sort, then people have the right to do that. And any attempt to ban, block, or regulate out access to X in the UK would, in my view, be in direct conflict with the ECHR, which is given power by our Human Rights Act of 1998, and specifically Article 10, which is, of course, the freedom of expression, which is not just words, but it can include protests and such like. So if you record a video, upload it to X, or you at a protest and you're filming and streaming that to X, all of these are protected expressions under Article 10. Of course, unless it crosses criminal thresholds such as incitement to violence and so on. So if it does those things, yes, the laws are there to protect it. So again, with all respect to Humza Yousaf here, when he says that we need to do more to regulate, There is enough regulation. There are enough laws already. It's a little bit like somebody criticizing the laws to specifically create an offence for assault against a shop worker, much like we have offence against an emergency worker, assault against an emergency worker. Assault is assault, whether it's against police, emergency workers, or shopkeepers, or whatever. But here's a very interesting thing. And if we do get to the position where the UK might consider blocking access to X or any other kind of social platform, not only would that be a bit of an authoritarian approach to stamping down on free speech, but if they do that, there are always ways to access these platforms, such as using one of my partners for my channel, which is NordVPN. Because I've noticed as well that there's already a block from international countries. So I read earlier, if I find one while I'm editing, I'll put it on screen now, where people outside of the UK have been saying that they cannot access police websites because they've been blocked from access, because presumably the government or someone in connection with the police services and the servers have blocked international access to these websites. Now, let's be clear, there is absolutely nothing wrong with accessing these websites. And if people internationally want to do that, or if there are any blocks put in place to platforms such as X, you can use a platform such as NordVPN to essentially get around these things. Because NordVPN is a virtual private network. It will give you an IP address outside of the UK so you can access things from different countries that might otherwise be blocked. And as a partner to my channel here, I can bring you a massive discount with 4 extra months off NordVPN with my unique link, which is easy to remember, nordvpn.com/BBB, because that's the nickname you gave me. So my profile appears here. The link is in the description below. You get 30 days to change your mind. But just in case you lose access to anything, or if you want to access Netflix programs outside of a country where they are blocked for copyright reasons, you can do that, and that's perfectly fine, because there's nothing illegal about using a VPN to access services outside of a country. But let's get back to the freedom of speech aspect and whether there is really any teeth in any threat from Humza Yousaf and Elon Musk. Because in response to that Humza Yousaf interview, Elon Musk posted to X as follows, and I quote, "He is super racist. Scotland gave him everything, and yet he loathes white people. This is obvious because he's never complained about the race of any other country's leadership. There are over 200 countries in the world, most of whom have single-race leadership. Why is he only attacking Scotland?" Now, in response to that, I understand World Times on X reports that Humza Yousaf's lawyer, Amar Anwar, said anybody, and I quote, "anybody who goes on social media, even if they own the platform, i.e. Elon Musk, and thinks that free speech is absolute, whether in the UK or the USA, needs to think again." Pause. No one said that free speech is absolute. It's just very strongly protected in the US, which is a very important point I'll come back to in a moment. They go on. Free speech carries responsibility, and if you break the law, there are consequences, as we've seen in recent days. Referring obviously to what's happened in the UK. People exercising what they think is free speech, which is a very important point, which I have a very strong opinion about, which, if you want my personal strong opinion about this, you have to go to Black Belt Secrets, link below, because I want to retain this channel as absolutely neutral and objective. I'm giving you both balanced sides here on this channel. But if you want my opinion on UK law, free speech, how it applies, etc., find my opinions and subscribe, please, down below to Black Belt Secrets. While you're at it, you'll find my money channel, as I call it down there, Daniel Shensmith. Subscribe to that as well if you want to learn how to make money. I'm quite good at that. I'm not bragging, but I will help you do that down below. Let's go on. Elon Musk, this quote carries on, has effectively painted a target on Humza Yousaf's back with his completely unacceptable, untrue, and inflammatory comments. Now, whether they are unacceptable, whether they are untrue, whether they are inflammatory comments or not, is a question of fact and a matter of law as to whether there are really any consequences. Now, in the UK, there might be consequences, but that's an important point I'll come back to in a moment, as I said. In response to that, Elon Musk further posted, he's obviously super racist against white people, so doubling down. He says, "I dare that scumbag to sue me. Go ahead, make my day." He goes on, Elon Musk says, "Legal discovery will show that however big a racist he's been in public communications, he's vastly worse in private communications." So that is speculation in response, that in discovery that they will find out that he's been worse, Elon Musk suggests, in private communications. Now, that warrants a bit of explanation, because in the UK, we have a process called a disclosure. In the US, you call it discovery. Essentially, what that means is if there's a claim brought by one party, then any document or any information or any evidence that goes against you, or indeed that you rely upon, you need to disclose or provide by way of discovery to your opponent. Now, many people might think that, well, hang on a minute, I'm helping my opponent by giving them evidence that goes against me. Yes, that's how it works. Why is that how it works? Well, because the courts want the truth. The courts don't care about you as an individual, whether you're bringing the claim or defending a claim. The courts don't care about you. They only care about you in so much as if you have a right, then how far can you extend and protect that right? And how far does the law protect that right? How far should we as a society provide these regulations that support your right to whatever it is? For example, the right to free speech. In the USA, the First Amendment right of free speech is, as I've observed and opined in my previous video, apparently, ostensibly much stronger in the US than it is in the UK. And even the wording of it suggests as much. In the UK, it's the freedom of expression. So long as we don't tell you something that's not lawful, then you can't do or say those things. But that's the process called discovery or disclosure, where parties will have to provide any information that might go against them. And so with that in mind, that's essentially just warning that if there were a lawsuit, that all of this would have to come out in the open. That is what we call the Streisand effect. Now, many people try to silence other people and bring a lawsuit with a particular purpose in mind to shut down commentary, shut down criticism, and this kind of thing. I have a case against me, which I will tell you about in due course. It's in the High Court in the UK, and I plan to report on it factually. I'm reserving my comments for the moment, but that will all come out in due course, and I will tell you all about that. And it is all I will say with regard to free speech and comments made on YouTube. Now, just to be clear, I don't condone negative and abusive comments. If I see them and they are really abusive and offensive, then I would generally remove them because I think that's right. I don't think people should abuse each other. I have a team of moderators. They do the same. And YouTube has its own filters and they do the same. But let's be equally clear, if it is criticism, even if it is firm criticism, even if it is unpleasant for somebody to read, the law does not protect the person against being offended in that way, unless it is grossly offensive or directly inciting attack and violence and so on. If that's the case, then they should be removed, because no one should be inciting direct violence against anybody else. Nobody should be making direct threats against anybody else. However, commentary that might be offensive, that still comes within the bounds of the freedom of expression protected by Article 10 in the UK under ECHR and, of course, the First Amendment in the United States. So with that in mind, that's the perfect place to jump in here to, if Humza Yousaf really were to bring any case for these comments that Elon Musk has made against him, there's been some suggestion that it might be defamation under UK law. Now, with respect to those that have made those comments, that is a bit ridiculous because Elon Musk is not in the UK. So it's not a UK defamation actionable lawsuit. If anything, it would be much more appropriate to be under US law, which is again where we have the problem. So then there's twofold. Either it would have to be something that amounts to an offence, a criminal offence, both in the UK and in the US, to then seek an extradition of Elon Musk to the UK for prosecution for that offence, which is not going to happen for all the reasons I've done in my previous video with the assistance of Brian Rio in my previous video. And secondly, if it were to be a straightforward defamation or some other kind of restriction of free speech lawsuit, it would have to be in the United States. And not only would that be a problem in and of itself, because the comments made by Elon Musk are not likely to amount to any kind of defamation or criminal offense or so on, largely because they are clearly just his opinion and he's free to express his opinion. There's a bigger reason than that, because, and again, I'll stand to be corrected by my US counterparts, but my very cursory reading of US law and case law research, looking at Cornell Law School of the United States, the case of New York Times and Sullivan came up, which was a US Supreme Court landmark decision which said that the freedom of speech protection limits the ability of public officials to sue for defamation. This was a significant landmark case which essentially said, and again I'll stand to be corrected if I've got this completely wrong, but it says that public officials, and I presume that would apply to public officials abroad as well as domestic public officials in the United States, because it's a general principle, public officials cannot recover damages for defamation related to their official conduct unless they can prove that the statements were made with actual malice. And actual malice being knowledge that this was false or being reckless as to whether it was false or not. But if someone publicizes an opinion based on material, and that is their opinion that they are free to hold, and whatever Humza Yousaf thinks of Elon Musk, clearly he doesn't like him very much, but whatever he thinks of him, Elon Musk is still a citizen, and he is entitled as a US citizen to give his opinions, particularly when they are based on material. Now, just to be clear, I'm not supporting one side or another here. I am giving you the raw truth, as I promised you on this channel, a raw analysis of how I see it. I will stand to be corrected if lawyers more superior than me tell me that I'm wrong, or US lawyers tell me that I've got this law wrong. But in my opinion, this is just someone else, a US citizen, albeit Elon Musk, giving his opinion online. So there is no recourse, regardless of Elon Musk being in the US or the UK or whatever. Even if it were based on US law, it's still going nowhere. But because Elon Musk is not in the UK, it would only be something that would be an extradition matter if he could be brought to the UK for such a thing, which again is just not going to happen. And there's a very interesting quote here from the case synopsis on this website that says, the court argued that the common law standard would result in a rule compelling the critic of official conduct to guarantee the truth of all his factual assertions, and to do so on pain of libel judgments virtually unlimited in amounts leads to self-censorship. Instead, the court put into place a more rigorous standard necessary for sustaining the maintenance of the opportunity for free political discussion, a fundamental principle of our constitutional system that is essential to the security of the republic. So in other words, somebody is free to criticize a public official. Now, albeit this was obviously in relation to US officials, it is not a far stretch to say that this law would apply if it were in respect of suits brought by international officials. That being that there is even one step removed, it's a different jurisdiction, I would say that makes it even stronger. Now, many people have said that Elon Musk shouldn't be commenting on UK politics, shouldn't be saying anything about UK politics, but isn't that ironic that that is directly against the notion and principle of the freedom of speech and expression? It's essentially saying if you are not here, you shouldn't talk about our rules. Well, in that case, then the UK should have no meddling whatsoever in the official politics or state of any other state in the world. No? Because if the UK has involvement in other countries, which in many cases that is very well justified, then it cannot be a valid argument that somebody outside of the UK is not allowed to criticize UK politics. That just doesn't sit right on any common sense level whatsoever. And so, as I said, I'm giving you my pure, raw views here. This is the truth explored, the law explored. So for that, please do subscribe if you want a fresh, refreshing change as to how I would look at these things. And as I say, I will remain objective and balanced on this channel so much as I can without wandering into opinion territory. If anything is leaning one way or the other, then it is just opinion based on an analysis. And I try to be objective. I always see things from both sides. There is always more than one side to it. There's always a lot more to a story than we ever know. In fact, little story before you leave. When I first did my work experience, which was going to a barrister's chambers in Birmingham, and I was probably 16 years old. I didn't come to the bar until much later on, but my first work experience was at a barrister's chambers when I was about 16 years old. And I walked in and I said, what is it like being a barrister? And then they said, well, you have to have an open mind and you have to see things from different perspectives. And this was probably when my mind really started to become open to see things from a different perspective. A lot of people like me because I can see things from a different perspective, and I try to stay balanced and neutral, and hopefully, humbly, you like my channel for that reason. So what they did is the barrister gave me a stack of papers on this high off the table. And I said, what's this? And he said, witness statements. And it was witness statements, oddly enough, of some kind of riot and affray and so on. And I read through those, and there were more than 50-something witness statements, all of the same incident. This was just one incident among a series of incidents. And every single witness statement was very subtly different about the precise events that they saw took place. Now, bearing in mind, they all saw the same thing. They all witnessed the same event. They were all circling the events. They all saw it happen. There were CCTVs. You know, some witness statements were from CCTV operators from different angles, some inside the building, some walking down the street, some in their vehicles, some physically at the scene, some being attacked, some doing the attacking and defending themselves and so on. All of these different witness perspectives gave over 50 different accounts of what they saw. And many of them were accusing different people of the same thing. So clearly, if one person saw this and another person saw that that was done by somebody else, there's a reasonable doubt as to whether they really did it, because you've got 3 people saying person A did it, another 3 people saying person B did it. Well, they can't both be right. So there was a reasonable doubt as to who was responsible for these offences. So you have to keep an open mind. So when I play these videos to you, this is really to give you an open mind. All I'm doing here is giving you snippets of what these people have actually said, what they've said to each other, how the law might apply, and how we might think about it. What is it we really want to regulate? Do we want to regulate this country to a degree that no one can say anything at all? Or do we just want to regulate it to the point where we are discouraging direct incitement to immediate harm? Because that is where I do give an opinion. No one should really be inciting direct harm to anybody else. I think regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum, I think you should hopefully agree that that would be wrong. No one should be directly inciting someone else to go and harm somebody. I think that's wrong. But that, again, that's my opinion, which I will save more of it for Black Belt Secrets. Please go and subscribe below. With that, I hope you found that interesting. There is so much more to come, because this is an international debate now. It is an international issue because people are commenting, especially with the internet being international, and I would like to comment on it. And I'd like your views on it respectfully, again, as I always ask, in the comment section below. And with that, I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.